On July 2, 1955, the morning sky above New York City was a calm, hazy blue. The kind of ordinary summer sky in which nothing unusual is supposed to happen. At LaGuardia Airport, families waved goodbye, pilots checked their instruments, and one particular flight, a routine passenger plane bound for Miami, prepared for takeoff. It was the sort of flight people booked without a second thought. Sun, beaches, cocktails, and a break from everyday life. No one who stepped onto that plane could have imagined that. According to every official record, they were about to disappear from the face of the earth. The passengers filed in with the lazy energy of holidaymakers. A businessman tightened his tie, pretending not to be excited about the break he'd secretly tagged on after his meetings. A young couple argued lovingly about who had forgotten the sunscreen. A family of four tried to keep two restless children from pressing their faces against the tiny oval windows. To the crew, it was all painfully familiar. People were people, luggage was luggage, and the sky was just the sky. The captain exchanged a nod with his first officer, glanced at the fuel gauges, and signed off the final checklist. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. At 9:07 a.m., the plane rolled out onto the runway. The engines roared, the metal body trembled, and the aircraft surged forward, faster and faster, until the ground dropped away and the city shrank beneath them into a grey-blue patchwork. The control tower watched their departure as it had watched thousands of others. A blip on the radar moved steadily along its assigned course. The radio crackled with the pilot's calm voice, confirming altitude and heading. Then, somewhere between New York and Miami, somewhere high above the soft white clouds, that blip simply vanished. First, the control tower thought it was a glitch. Radars were not perfect, and once in a while, technology hiccuped. The operator tapped the screen, adjusted the dial, and checked the neighboring sectors. Nothing. The pilot's voice, which had been clear minutes before, fell silent. There was no distress signal, no cry for help, no hint of turbulence or fire or hijackers. One moment, Flight 914 was cruising steadily. The next, it had melted into thin air. Confused, the controllers called other towers along the flight path. Had anyone seen it? Had anyone heard from the crew? One by one, the answers came back the same. No radar contact, no emergency landing, no sign at all. Panic doesn't come all at once in an airport. It seeps in slowly, hidden behind procedures and forms. First there were calls to maintenance, then calls to the weather service, then calls to the military. While the officials insisted that everyone remain calm, that they were looking into it, families waiting in Miami watched the arrival board flip from on time to delayed, and finally, after an agonizing stretch of silence, to cancelled. At first, people were annoyed, then worried. Then someone overheard a whisper about a missing plane, and that word missing spread like a virus. Search and rescue teams combed the skies and seas along the route. For days, they scoured every possible crash zone, hoping to find wreckage, debris, anything. But there was nothing. No fuel slick on the ocean surface, no twisted metal, no life rafts. It was as if the plane had been plucked out of reality by an invisible hand. After weeks of searching, the operation was quietly scaled down, then officially closed. The story disappeared into the archives of unsolved aviation mysteries. The families were left with death certificates, but no bodies, condolences, but no closure. Time moved forward, as it always does, and the world slowly forgot. Except the world has a strange way of bringing back what it has lost. On a warm morning decades later, on May 21, 1992, the control tower at an international airport in Caracas, Venezuela, began like any other day. The sun was already bright, the air thick with heat, and the controllers were busy guiding a steady stream of arrivals and departures. Coffee cups cooled on consoles. Radios buzzed with the clipped, confident voices of pilots. Then, at 9:37 a.m., a new signal appeared on the radar. At first, no one paid special attention. Planes appear on radar all the time, that's their job. But this one was moving in an odd way, not along a standard corridor. The trajectory was all wrong, coming in from a direction that didn't match any scheduled route. The operator frowned, zoomed in on the blip, and opened the communication channel. Unidentified aircraft. This is Caracas Tower. You are entering controlled airspace. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. There was a moment of static, and then a male voice, steady but tense, replied. Caracas Tower. This is Flight 914 from New York to Miami. Estimated arrival was 9:55 a.m. on July 2, 1955. Requesting permission to land. The control room fell silent. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The operator's hand froze above the console. The year the pilot had just given didn't make any sense. It wasn't a slip of the tongue, he had stated it calmly, like routine information. July 2, 1955. Some of the younger staff exchanged confused looks, but the older supervisor felt something cold twist in his stomach. He knew that date. He had heard that story. A missing plane. No wreckage. No survivors. Carefully, he pressed the talk button again. Flight 914. Please confirm. Did you say your departure date is July 2nd, 1955? A pause. Then, clear and irritated, the pilot repeated his words. Affirmative, Tower. New York to Miami, July 2nd, 1955. Were low on fuel and request immediate landing instructions. His voice carried that familiar mixture of professionalism and fatigue. There was no hint of madness or fear. To him, everything was normal. To the tower, nothing was. As the controllers exchanged frantic whispers, the radar confirmed what their eyes soon would. A large passenger aircraft, older in design, approaching the airport. It broke through the clouds with the grace of a ghost, its metal skin gleaming. Its logo faded, but still visible. This was not the sleek, modern jet people were used to seeing in 1992. This was a machine from another era, like a living museum piece stubbornly refusing to belong to the past. The tower, faced with a decision that had no precedent, finally did the one thing that made sense. They cleared the plane to land. The runway trembled as the aircraft touched down. The engines whined, the wheels screeched, and the plane rolled forward, slowing until it came to an uneasy stop on the hot tarmac. Ground crew members, who had been rushed out in a hurry, stared with wide eyes. The windows of the plane were filled with faces wearing clothes from another time. Faces with expressions of confusion and relief. They pressed their hands to the glass, shielding their eyes from the brightness, trying to understand where they were and why everything looked so wrong. The pilot's voice sounded on the radio once more, sharp and anxious. Tower, why is everything in Spanish? Where are we? This doesn't look like Miami. The controller swallowed hard and tried to keep his tone neutral. Flight 914, you have landed in Caracas, Venezuela. Please remain calm and follow instructions. We will send ground personnel to assist you. Inside the cabin, the announcement echoed down the aisle, setting off a wave of murmurs. Caracas, Venezuela. That wasn't on anyone's ticket. Airport security and officials, summoned in a rush, surrounded the plane at a cautious distance. No one was sure how to treat this situation. Was it a hijacking? A prank? Some top-secret military experiment gone wrong? They approached the aircraft with a mixture of fear and fascination, expecting anything and nothing at once. When the door finally opened, the air that spilled out carried a faint scent of old cigarette smoke, perfume from another decade, and something else. The unmistakable smell of the past. A uniformed man stepped into the doorway, the captain. His hat, cut, and insignia were unmistakably out of date, but his posture was firm. He looked down the stairs at the crowd of people, the unfamiliar vehicles, the strange advertisements in the distance, and his face hardened. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "We were supposed to land in Miami. Our flight time hasn't even been that long. What kind of airport is this?" One of the officials, trying to keep his voice steady, asked him for his flight manifest and departure date. The pilot handed over the papers, and every document said the same thing. New York to Miami, July 2nd, 1955. Some of the staff instinctively reached for their phones, wanting to capture this impossible moment. But the supervisor barked at them to stop. There was no protocol for this. But instinct screamed that they were dealing with something bigger than any of them. Something that might never be believed if it got out in the wrong way. As the officials argued quietly among themselves, an elderly mechanic, who had rushed out with the others, stared at the aircraft with growing dread. He recognized that model. He had seen old posters, old photographs. Slowly, a memory surfaced. An article about a plane lost without trace, the one that had haunted aviation books for decades. According to history, that plane had never landed anywhere. News travels fast inside an airport, even when people try to contain it. Rumors spread among the staff that a ghost plane had arrived, that passengers were dressed like people from black and white movies, that their passports looked brand new but bore stamps from the Eisenhower era. The decision was made to keep civilians away and move the plane to a remote section of the runway. Buses were prepared to transport the passengers. Medical teams and psychologists were called, just in case. How do you tell people who think they've been in the air for a few hours that, outside their cabin, 37 years have passed? But before anyone could calmly explain the impossible truth, something even stranger happened. The pilot, who had been standing at the top of the stairs, glanced at the documents the official was holding, then at the strange vehicles and uniforms below. His eyes narrowed. A wave of fear and anger crossed his face. He shouted something over his shoulder to his crew, then turned back to the officials. "We're leaving," he said abruptly. Before anyone could react, he slammed the door shut. What happened next remains a point of heated argument among those who claim to have been there. Some say the ground crew tried to block the plane with their vehicles. Others insist they were still too paralyzed by shock to act in time. What is clear is that the engines roared to life once more. The aircraft, which had just landed, began to move. Disbelieving, the tower watched as the old plane taxied clumsily, turned toward the runway, and against every instruction being shouted over the radio accelerated. The controllers screamed into their microphones, ordering the pilot to stop. Security vehicles raced in pursuit, but they were too late. The plane gathered speed, lifted off the ground, and rose back into the sky, leaving behind a chaos of sirens, shouting, and sheer disbelief. The old aircraft climbed higher, its outline growing smaller against the brilliant Venezuelan sun, then slipped into the clouds and vanished once again from radar. It was as if reality had briefly cracked open, allowing something lost to slip through, only to snap shut again. In the days that followed, officials struggled to make sense of what had happened. Radar logs clearly showed the arrival and departure of a plane that should not exist. Witness statements were collected, filled with trembling descriptions of old-fashioned clothing, outdated passports, and confused faces. A few physical objects remained as evidence. A schedule of flights printed in yellowed ink, a small calendar from 1955, a pocket watch that seemed to have stopped just minutes before the landing. These items, locked away in a drawer, became the only tangible proof of an encounter that defied every rule. Of course, stories like this rarely stay locked up forever. Whispers escaped the airport walls, found their way to journalists, and then to curious minds all over the world. Some dismissed the tale as a hoax, an urban legend crafted to thrill and terrify. Others swore that it was all true, that somewhere out there, in the strange, uncharted currents of time. A plane full of unsuspecting passengers was still trying to reach Miami. The families of the original missing flight, older now or gone entirely, were dragged once more through the pain of not knowing what really happened. Had their loved ones lived for a few extra, stolen hours in the sky? Had they somehow slipped through time itself? We may never know. Perhaps the plane is still out there, drifting between years like a message stuck in a bottle, occasionally brushing against our world before fading away again. Or perhaps it finally found a place to land, in some quiet corner of reality where clocks don't quite agree with calendars. What remains is the question that haunts every unexplained disappearance and every unsolved mystery. How much do we really understand about the world we live in? We like to think time is a straight line, that planes take off and land, that stories begin and end in neat, clear ways. But sometimes, a missing flight appears on a radar screen 37 years too late, and all our neat lines twist into loops. As you listen to this story, somewhere a plane is taking off, somewhere a family is waving goodbye, certain that they will meet again in a few hours. Somewhere a pilot trusts his instruments, a controller trusts his radar, and we all trust that tomorrow will look like today. And yet, hidden in the cracks of reality, there are stories like this one that remind us. Not everything fits into our tidy explanations. Some journeys are longer than we think. Some goodbyes echo for decades. Some flights never truly arrive, and yet they never truly vanish. That's why we tell these tales. Not to frighten you, but to remind you how strange and fragile our world can be. Because as long as we keep asking questions, as long as we keep searching the skies and the shadows of history, the stories of the missing and the mysterious will never be completely lost. They will live on in our memories, in our doubts, and in the stories we share with each other. So, if you want to keep exploring the brightest, strangest, and most unforgettable corners of our world's mysteries, stay with us. Stay on the bright side of life together with my channel, Living Stories.